Picture this for a second. You're driving home after a long day. Maybe you're tired, maybe you're relaxed, maybe you've got music playing, out of nowhere, flashing lights in your rearview mirror. Your stomach drops just a little. You pull over, heart beating faster than normal. The officer walks up, calm, friendly, even smiling. The conversation feels easy, almost casual. You start to relax. Then comes the question that changes everything. Have you had anything to drink tonight? And just like that, everything hinges on what you say next. Most people, without thinking, respond with something like, I only had 2 beers, or just a couple glasses of wine. It feels harmless, honest, responsible even. But in reality, that single sentence has caused more problems for drivers than almost anything else said during a traffic stop. Not because 2 drinks automatically mean you're intoxicated, but because the moment you admit to drinking, the entire situation shifts. Instantly. You're no longer just a driver who made a minor mistake. You've now become part of a potential DUI investigation, and that's the moment most people don't even realize they've stepped into a completely different game. What you're about to learn isn't about being rude or disrespectful. It's about understanding the situation for what it really is, and protecting yourself in a moment where every word matters more than you think. Because the truth is, people don't usually get into trouble because they're guilty. They get into trouble because they talk themselves into it. There are 3 critical moments during a traffic stop where people unknowingly make things worse for themselves. 3 moments where the average person, trying to be cooperative or polite, actually ends up helping build a case against themselves. The first is talking too much. The second is performing when they don't have to. And the third is not understanding the difference between what's optional and what's required. If you can grasp these 3 things, you'll handle a traffic stop better than most people ever will. Let's start with the first mistake: talking. When an officer asks if you've been drinking, it might feel like small talk. It might even sound casual or friendly, but it's not. That question has a purpose. It's designed to gather evidence. The officer isn't asking about your evening because they're curious about your plans or your dinner. They're asking because they want an admission. If you say no, but there's any indication of alcohol, like a smell, they may assume you're being dishonest. If you say yes, even casually, you've just handed them a piece of evidence they can document. From there, everything starts stacking up. Your words get combined with observations. Maybe they note the smell of alcohol, your eyes, your speech, your movements, your driving pattern. Individually, these things might not mean much, but together, they create a narrative, and that narrative is what follows you. This is why your goal during a stop is not to sound friendly. It's not to explain your situation. It's not to convince the officer of anything. Your goal is simple. Stop giving away information that can be used against you. Now let's talk about the most common phrase people use, and why it backfires almost every time. I only had 2 beers. People say it because they think it makes them sound reasonable, controlled, honest. They believe it shows they're not reckless, but to someone who hears it every single day, it doesn't sound unique or reassuring. It sounds predictable. It's one of the most overused lines officers encounter, and because of that, it often has the opposite effect of what people intend. Instead of helping, it signals something else entirely. It places you into a category, a familiar pattern. And once that happens, the officer begins connecting dots, whether you realize it or not. The problem isn't just what you say, it's what saying it allows. So instead of trying to explain yourself, there's a far better approach. A simple, controlled response that keeps things respectful while protecting you at the same time. You say, "Officer, here are my license, registration, and insurance. I'm not answering any questions." That's it. No extra words, no justifications, no storytelling. You're not saying you had 1 drink. You're not saying you had none. You're not explaining where you came from or how long ago you drank. You're simply declining to answer. And that works because it does 3 important things at once. It keeps your tone polite, it avoids sounding confrontational, and it gives the officer nothing useful to build on. Now, will the officer like that response? Probably not. You might get pushback. You might hear things like, "If you haven't been drinking, why not just say so?" Or, "Sounds like you're hiding something." This is where most people crack. They feel pressure. They feel like they need to explain themselves. Don't. You're not there to win an argument. You're not there to prove anything in that moment. The more you talk, the more opportunities you create for your words to be interpreted, misinterpreted, or written down in a way that doesn't help you. If the officer continues pressing, your response becomes even simpler. I plead the fifth. Say it calmly, say it clearly, and stop there. No attitude, no sarcasm, no defensiveness, just calm, controlled repetition. Because the truth is, you don't win these situations by being clever. You win them by being controlled. Now let's be clear about something important. If an officer gives you a lawful order, like asking you to step out of the vehicle, you comply. No hesitation, no argument. This isn't the moment to debate rights or escalate the situation. Refusing a lawful order can turn a manageable situation into a serious one very quickly. So if you're told to step out, you step out. But compliance does not mean you suddenly start answering questions or volunteering information. Those are two completely different things. You can follow instructions while still protecting yourself. Once you're outside the vehicle, this is where the second mistake usually happens: performing. You'll likely be asked to do what are commonly known as field sobriety tests, standing on one leg, walking in a straight line, following a pen with your eyes. These are often presented as a chance to prove you're okay, but in reality, that's not how they function. Think about the conditions. You're on the side of the road, lights flashing, cars passing by, you're nervous, maybe tired, maybe confused, and now you're expected to perform precise physical tasks under pressure while being observed and evaluated. That's not a neutral test environment. These tests are designed to produce observations, notes, footage, statements that can later be used to support a conclusion. And here's the key point many people don't realize. Depending on where you are, these tests may be optional. That's something you need to understand ahead of time by knowing your local laws. In many places, you can politely decline these tests. And if you choose to decline, you simply say, "I'm not going to do those tests." Again, calm, respectful, firm. No need to justify, no need to argue, because if the officer already has enough to arrest you, they will proceed regardless. And if they don't, you don't need to provide additional material that could be used later. Now let's talk about the third mistake: confusing different types of tests. Not all tests are the same. There's a major difference between roadside tests and certified chemical tests. Roadside breath devices, for example, are often optional in many places. Declining them may not carry the same consequences as refusing a certified test. Certified tests, like a breath test at a station or a blood test, can have serious legal implications if refused, including license suspension. This is where understanding your local laws becomes absolutely critical, because making the wrong decision in that moment without knowing the consequences can turn a difficult situation into a much bigger problem. So before you ever find yourself in this situation, take the time to learn what applies where you live. Now let's talk about something that people often overlook: your behavior. Even if you say the right things, your actions matter. Keep your hands visible. Move slowly. If you need to reach for something, say it first. Turn on your interior light if it's dark. Keep your tone steady. Your goal is not to appear overly friendly or overly defensive. Your goal is to appear calm, predictable, and non-threatening. Because every movement, every gesture, every word has the potential to be noted and described later. And here's the part that catches a lot of genuinely good people off guard. They think, "I'm not doing anything wrong, I'm honest. I'll just cooperate and this will be over quickly." But that mindset can actually work against you, because a traffic stop isn't a casual conversation, it's an investigation. And once you understand that, your approach changes completely. You stop trying to be liked. You stop trying to explain, you stop trying to sound innocent, and you start being deliberate with what you say and what you don't say. That's not being difficult, that's being aware. So let's bring this all together. If you're asked whether you've been drinking, don't fall into the trap of trying to explain. If you're asked to perform tests you're not required to take, don't feel pressured into doing them. And make sure you understand the difference between optional roadside tests and required certified ones. Then stick to a simple, controlled script. Provide your documents, decline to answer questions, and remain calm. If pressed, assert your right to remain silent, clearly and respectfully. And above all, remember this: be polite, be calm, and be quiet. Those three things will take you further than trying to talk your way out of a situation ever will. If you made it this far, you already understand something most people don't, and that alone puts you ahead. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever been in a situation like this? Did you know these things beforehand, or did you learn the hard way? Drop your experience in the comments. And if you found this helpful, make sure you stick around, because understanding how these situations actually work can make all the difference when it matters most.